Yeah, well, I do think I mean, I think it's to your point. It's going to be a little bit evolved, and part of it's use case driven, right? In our case, we are not. If I think of these other approaches, it's because you're trying to deal with core operational data. That's not what we're doing, right? And so, at least on the enterprise IT side, so I think that's part of it. I do think the other thing that if I look at well, if we kind of pull out a little bit from knowledge, is that necessarily, as we've talked to previously, they are having to expand their footprint, right? They cannot hit their growth targets at their scale, strictly staying focused on ITSM, which is why, of course, we're seeing all of this. They rarely even talk about ITSM anymore.
Hmm.
I did find it so a couple of takeaways around that, however. The first is that it's much like many of their competitors, although I think to a certain extent for their size more so, they're getting extremely broad. It's getting very hard to define what business they're in across the spectrum. The CRM introduction is an example. I mean, I guess they're trying to focus on, they're calling themselves the business transformation company or maybe a workflow company,
Hmm.
but it's like all over the place. It's hard to keep track of it. And so I think that is interesting. And I think that some of the other announcements, and we'll just skate through them a little bit. So point to that, right? So I picked up on they're introducing what they're calling the core business suite, which I'm not really sure. What is striking me a little bit is it sort of sounds like it's trying to do much of what MoveWorks is attempting to do, an AI agent based approach to providing employees with access to HR and some other related, interestingly though not IT, it sounds like. So like everything
Hmm.
but focused on like suppliers and systems. And so that was sort of interesting. And then they also introduced a partnership with UKG, which UKG, of course, is one of the major
Hmm.
HRIS companies. Um, and this one also focused on employee productivity, but sounds like mostly trying to not step on UKG's toes, and that UKG has their own AI agent for HR, and so trying to buddy that up, but also sort of running in conflict with the core business suite offering, although that's sort of more in the finance, but also touching on HR. So again, sort of this a weird overlap. And then they also had this really weird announcement that was basically talking about how they're trying to realizing the promise of lights out IT operations. And so, near as I can tell, it wasn't a product per se, but it was a whole series of agents on their agentic platform, all focused on various components of ITSM, ITOM, ITAM, various elements, with the premise being that if you, I guess, throw them all into the pot and stir it around, that you now have an autonomous IT operation. And so it was just like I guess that was an ode to the traditional space, but it was like this sort of mishmashy feel. And I
Hmm.
don't know, maybe it felt better for 5 days, instead of trying to digest it all at once. But it was like it really felt like all over the place. But again, I think if I compare it to AWS or any of the other big giant companies that you just get bombed with announcements. So I don't know, it was just an interesting sort of like I'm not sure what they're doing right now.